what it's worth, this is a record attendance for this year's convention. We have over 2,800 people here. We have 1,100 at lunch today. That is a record. So I have the privilege to introduce our speaker this morning, Reggie D. Ford. He is a sought-after motivational speaker and best-selling author of Perseverance Through Severe Dysfunction. By sharing his captivating journey of turning pain into peace through the process of perseverance, Reggie motivates positive change in all those he encounters. Through his work, Reggie helps organizations embrace vulnerability and persevere through pain points impeding their success. First-generation college graduate, former Division I football player at Vanderbilt University, go Commodores, anchor down. Reggie brings a diverse perspective to his roles as entrepreneur, philanthropist, mental health advocate, and social activist. In addition to speaking, Reggie is a certified yoga instructor. He runs Rose Creek Wealth Management as well. And he lives in Music City, my hometown, Nashville, Tennessee. And I have to just side note here, I learned that Reggie and I graduated from the same wonderful independent school in Nashville, Tennessee, Montgomery Bell Academy. Roll, Red, roll. I'm only a couple of years older than Reggie, which surprised me. I'm a lot older. I'm 21 years older. I realize I'm getting old. Anyway, that's another conversation for another day. Reggie lives in Nashville with his wife, Katie, their Rottweiler, Rosie. Please give a big, warm welcome. I know you're going to love hearing from Reggie.
If you can hear, say persevere. Persevere. I said if you can hear, say persevere. Persevere. Love it. Y'all are awake this morning. I want to echo something that Barbara said about you all being in the greatest profession that there is. Right? Give yourselves a round of applause because every single day, you have the opportunity to impact change for the next generation. We are future ready, and I absolutely love that. Today, we're going to go on a journey. I hope that this is a safe place for me, because I like to be very vulnerable in my talks. Barbara was talking earlier about how she loved my authenticity, and that's something that I value and I take pride in. So, you can give me a but am I safe today?
Yes.
All right, I love the empathetic so if you feel it, let it come out. I love it. I love it. All right? But we're dealing with a crisis, right? And you heard mental health advocate, and that wasn't always the case, but it became an issue that I really wanted to address because I saw the impact that it had on my life. And I see the impact that it has on our students. Right? These statistics are staggering. 77% of our college students, right, feel this psychological distress. 93% of school health leaders are experiencing increased levels of anxiety with their students. These are alarming, and we've got kids who are hopeless, who are feeling despair, and that's leading to thoughts, attempts, and completions of suicide. And within the whole gambit of all of that, only 15% of our young people are getting mental health treatment. And I think it is crucial to realize that professional treatment, it is absolutely needed and necessary in many cases, but we have a job on a daily basis to make sure that we foster good mental health and well-being, that we connect with our young people, and that we build the resilience so that they can get through all the challenges that they face in life. How are we going to do that today? I got 9 tips for y'all. 9 tools for promoting well-being. 9 tips for promoting well-being. 3 key themes throughout the day. There are going to be 3 things that we talk about that are going to help promote resilience in your student and help you truly connect with them on a different level. And 1 story, perseverance. If you can hear, say persevere. Persevere. If you can read, say persevere. Persevere. Awesome. My story, I've had a lot of perseverance. Had to. And I'll tell you a little bit about my upbringing, but there was a time in my life, fairly recently, where I felt like I didn't have the capability to persevere any further. I found myself lying on a cold hardwood floor, crying my eyes out. My wife was there trying to console me. I had so many overwhelming feelings of depression, of anxiety, triggers from my PTSD that came up that I couldn't even handle, and all of my coping mechanisms went out the window. Can I be real with y'all? Right? I was lying there and I had lost the people who I loved so dearly, who were there from day one. They were no part of my life anymore. And I felt cheated. I felt cheated by losing the presence of my most nurturing person in my world. Right? And I had this out-of-body experience at that moment, and I looked at myself, lying there. I was blabbering, I was speaking incoherently, I was not in my right mind, full-blown panic attack. And I looked at myself, and I asked, how in the world did you end up here? And I had to think, leading up to that moment, 30 days of no sleep. If any of y'all have had insomnia, you know what even one day feels like. 30 days of no sleep. And the question, how did I end up there? The answer I got to was unaddressed trauma. A lot of it from my childhood, some of it from my young adulthood. And that was something that I really needed to focus on. And so the day after that, that's what I've been focused. It's just how do I help heal my trauma and tell my story at a level that can help heal somebody else's. I was listening to a friend speak the other day, Logan Taylor. If you ever want to hear a great speaker, he's fantastic. And he said, if your story or you could be the aspirin to somebody's headache, why would you let them suffer? And I love that. If you could be the aspirin to somebody's headache, why would you let them suffer? And so that's why I get up here and I share my story so vulnerably with you all. I want to introduce y'all to some people. This is my family. And I love this picture because it looks very cheerful, very happy, but under the surface there is, of course, all the things that we deal with in family. On the left side of the screen, that's my dad and my mom. I'll talk about them later. On the right side, those are my grandparents on my dad's side. And tell of two sides. On one side, it was so much love, nurture, and care. And on the other, it's where a lot of my childhood trauma comes from. And my mom, it's my girl. I have a big old head in that picture, y'all. And ears, too. Oh, man, my mom, she's so beautiful, and I love her to death. For a long time, it was just me and her. It was just me and her, and we were thick as thieves, and she was very young, and so we were almost like brother and sister. That's how we acted a lot. And then she gave me brothers and sisters. It's my sister Secret on the right, and my brother Demo. I love them to death, and they're a lot older than that now, but I always see them, and I see them looking like that, and it just brings so much joy to my heart. My dad, he wasn't in my life much growing up. We didn't really bond until I was 18. He spent most of my childhood in prison. But when we got out, you see on his shirt, my favorite people call me Dad. Right? We became really close. Me and my other brothers that my dad had as well. I'm the oldest. I know I look like a baby in that one, but I'm the oldest, and we're all just really close. But again, I want to point out two very special people to me. My grandparents. And I'm going to leave them up here while I tell a little bit more of this story, just because I don't think I'm here without them. And so I hope y'all like their smiles, especially my grandma. She loves the smiles, the beautiful smiles. Yeah. See, the reason I'm up here is I went to a school like yours, right? But my journey to that school was unlike many of your students likely. I grew up surrounded by poverty, crime, some of the same things that you witnessed when you were at the school in the inner city. And most of the students that I went to experienced a lot of the same things. But then, some things changed for me. See, my mom, she stressed the importance of education. She was always on top of me, would beat it over my head. Told y'all some trauma there. But it helped, right? It helped when I stepped into school. It helped when I was advanced at an early age, and then I got to be even in more advanced classes and get all of this extra work and all these assignments that I just embraced and I dove into head first. And it really started to pay off. When I was 10 years old, there was this program called Backfield in Motion that came to town. And Backfield in Motion, as the name sounds, it had a sports theme to it. But it was very much focused on education, just like my mom was. But the sports were the hook. And so, for the first time in my life, because we didn't have a car, we didn't have money for league fees, I couldn't buy equipment, I had the opportunity to play organized football. And through that program, I was introduced to people from a school like yours. Right, they were volunteering as the tutors. And there was this one guy, Justin. And Justin realized that I was very bright, so he would throw different concepts at me. He would see if I could pick up on them, and I could. And he decided it may be a good idea if I come to a school like yours. And I remember the first introduction to the school was at a football game on a Friday night. Roll Red. Football game, and I hope no one takes offense to this, but I walked there, and the first thing that came to my mind, big old crowds like this. Where do all these white people come from? Right? I had lived in such a myopic world that just a few miles west of where I was living was a whole new world for me. Right? Fast forward a couple of years and I'm enrolling at that school. And it was very difficult, let me tell you. The transition from public school to private school for me was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. It had nothing to do with the academics. Culturally, socially, emotionally, toughest thing I've ever had to do. I went from a school where I was represented in the majority to a school where I was the only person who identified as a black boy at the school with all boys. It was tough. Even with that, I adapted well. I adapted well to the academic rigor. I had some growing pains for sure. I remember my first assignment was summer reading. And coming from public school, we didn't do anything in the summer, right? Walk out of class, throw my paper in the air, and I'm out. So I gotta read. I haven't read a book cover to cover in my life. But I had to read 4 and write about it. Okay? I've never typed anything in my life. Read the instructions. Write everything in Times New Roman 12-point font, double space. Some of y'all have heard this, huh? So I get there. Okay. Times New Roman 12 font. It's already there. It's already programmed into the system. I start to type. D. Space. Protagonist, space, grand, space, across, space, and that's what I did for my entire essay on all 4 books. And I had these little red squiggly lines all the way through my paper, and I was like, that's why they wanted me to actually proofread this. When I got to class that next day and turned those in, I looked and I was like, no, you cheated. You got all these spaces in between your lines. Like, no, that's not right. You got to do the work. I had no idea what double spaced was. Something that simple, right? But that shows the difference in the lives and the assignments and the things that I was exposed to. On one of those assignments, we had a creative writing exercise where we could talk about anything that we wanted. So I pulled a page out of my childhood book and talked about an AAU team that made it to the national championship. And I named some of my friends from back home, and D'Angelo hit the game-winning shot to win the championship and was carried off in the crowd on people's shoulders. And then when he went home, he told his mom, I did a great job. I won the game for the team. And she was so proud of him. And I remember getting a comment on that paper. This is not what double space is. No, that wasn't the comment. The comment said, fantastic story, but I find it quite unrealistic that D'Angelo's mom would have been at the game had it been a national championship. It wasn't realistic. That was my reality. I got so used to performing and doing all these things and looking up and not recognizing a single face in the crowd. So her reality and my reality were two different realities, but they both were true for us. I did really well. That was my 8th grade year. I did really well that year and ended up winning the Gentleman Scholar Athlete of the Year award. That's the school's ideal, the school's motto, and they recognized me. But even with that, I ain't coming back to this school. Ain't no way. I want to go back to public school. So I called up my friends that I had made an acquaintance with, and I was like, listen, I got to go back to Hillsborough, Overton. I'm going to public school, be with my friends. Get off the phone with one of my buddies. He's like, all right, man, I just hope we get to play you in basketball. That's the only thing on a child's mind, right? As soon as I hang up off the phone with him, his mom calls me. It's like, are you serious? No, we need you. We want you to come here. Come. I'm like, okay, crazy lady. A couple minutes later, his dad calls and he asks if he can come see me. Sure. So he comes to my apartment and we're sitting in his car. And I'm still just trying to think, because there's been an outpour of people, asking me to come back and wondering why I'm not coming. And so I'm throwing all the excuses at him, like, we don't have the money for the small tuition that you want me to pay, can't get there every day. And like, all these things are really true, but, they weren't accepting any of it. So I'm sitting there in the car with this man who's super big, super stoic, pilot, former student athlete, and I'm just like, why? And then he does and says something that changed my entire perspective. This big, stoic man starts to cry. And I'm thinking, he certainly isn't crying about where this kid goes to school next year. But he says, Reggie, my son is a better person because of you. This school is a better place because of your presence. You matter. For the first time, with all that outpour of love, no one had ever expressed to me the value that I brought to the school. And so that shift in my mind said, okay, I'm coming back. I know there are people who love me, and I know that I add value here. I can change this environment for the better. I gotta come back. And so high school was a totally different story. Part of it was there were, more people who I could relate to in classes above me, and then some folks that were added to the class. And that made all the difference. And I did really well there. And so approaching, graduation, I was getting offers from all different types of schools. Ivy Leagues. Those were cool letters to receive. Right? Think Harvard, come to Yale. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, absolutely not. I've already made that tough transition from going from something that I'm used to some totally different world, and I'm good. I want to go to Vanderbilt University. I made up my mind when I was 10 years old, when I was playing the backfield in motion. I played in an all-star game, and it was at Vanderbilt Stadium. And I was like, yeah, this is where I want to go. But everyone from head of school to teachers to coaches to other parents, all of this were pressuring me to choose Harvard, go to Harvard, think Harvard. And it would have been a great headline, right? From the hood to Harvard and all this stuff, but I didn't want that headline written. You see, I'm gonna go back a little bit. In that middle picture, I was a big brother to fatherless children. I was their father in a way. I didn't want to run off and be this figment of a brother who was out in Massachusetts or anything like that. I needed to be there. I wanted to be there as an example for them. And that was one of the main reasons why I was like, I gotta be here. People didn't understand that because, again, my reality and their reality were totally different things. So I chose Vanderbilt. And I got in, got accepted, and this was after y'all, because I really didn't want to go to Harvard. I just totally self-sabotaged. When it came to doing standardized tests, I would C, C, B, C, 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 B, 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 and lay my head down. That's how much I didn't want to leave. Eventually, had to take those a couple of times, but then got admitted to Vanderbilt. I walked on to the football team, earned a spot on the team, and it was one of the most fantastic experiences of my life. I studied economics, and I really didn't know what I was going to do with my academic career, just because I didn't have any examples in front of me. Neither of my parents went to college, graduated from high school. And they definitely didn't go to college, and so I was paving the way and trying to understand what I was going to do with my life. I made some fantastic friends and people that I met in college, but there was one person that was extremely special. And if she would ever come up, she don't want, she's shy, y'all. This is Katie. I met her while I was at school. And she opened my eyes to something that I wasn't even aware of. I remember after meeting and talking to her, and we were talking about our different realities, our different childhood and upbringing, she was very alarmed by some of the things that I had normalized. It wasn't normal for her, but it was normal for me to have a 14-year-old mother who was born to a 15-year-old mother. Meaning that if I had continued that trend, I'd be a grandfather of a 3 or 4-year-old right now. Could y'all imagine? It wasn't normal to have adults just openly do drugs in front of children. Right? I can remember some of my earliest memories being 2 or 3 years old, walking to the bathroom, peeing in a bottle, and then handing that bottle to an adult so that they could pass a drug test. It wasn't normal the way that I normalized the death of young people. Had a really good friend die when I was 14 years old. He was 15 years old, shot 6 times in the chest. When I think back to backfield in motion, I played quarterback, and so I line up and I can see all my players around me. My center, he's dead. My left guard, he's in prison for murder. My tight end, he's addicted to drugs. My receiver over there, he's dead. One of my running backs is addicted to drugs. The other running back is dead. My right guard, those 13 people on that team. That wasn't normal. And so she handed me this questionnaire, had me start filling it out, checking yes or no if I've experienced these things. And I get to it, and I pass it to her, and I'm feeling proud. Yeah, I got a perfect score. I love that y'all laugh. We got a perfect score on the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. If you're familiar with that, if you're not familiar with that, it looks at some of the traumas that you experienced before your 18th birthday, from abuse to neglect to household dysfunction, right? Parent incarcerated, 1 ACE. Drug use, ACE. Mental illness in the house, ACE. Sexual abuse, ACE. 10 out of 10, y'all. And to see the correlation between this childhood trauma and the health outcomes later in life, physical health, mental health, social health, it was alarming to me. The one that stood out the most, I think 2, 14 times more likely to attempt or commit suicide if you have 4 or more ACEs. I got 10. 6 or more ACEs in your life expectancy is decreased by 20 years. I got 10. Now I'm thinking, I understand why my grandfather died at 44 years old. My other grandfather died at 50 years old. Raise your hand if you're older than that right now, not to point you out, but right, they didn't make it. When am I gonna die? That was something that would always play in the back of my mind. I honestly didn't think I would make it to 18. But adverse childhood experiences, not perfect, not foolproof in the study, but it's very telling to the lives that people live. And so seeing this information, I got really curious about my mental health, but it was kind of that first seed that was planted, and I started to just keep it in the back of my head as I continued on my process. I eventually graduated from Vanderbilt University. Didn't know what I wanted to do, so I went back to school and got a master's degree in accounting from the business school at Vandy. From there, I became a CPA, certified public accountant, working in external audit, the most invigorating work there is. So much fun. I'm being sarcastic. I enjoyed the company and I did a lot of great things there, but I decided that wasn't for me. And that was okay. And so I switched over to a career in wealth management. And being in that, I really enjoyed the work that I was doing, sitting across from families and being able to help them with their financial issues or even just help them reach goals that they have for themselves. I loved it so much that I decided I was going to start a business doing it. And I'm going to call it Rose Creek Wealth Management. And the name Rose Creek derives itself from the metaphor of the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete. Right, through all the perceived impossibilities, poor soil, little light, no water, that rose, it grows. And when we look at the rose, yes, it may have damaged petals. It may be leaning to the side. It may have some blemishes, but we don't look at those and say, oh man. We marvel at its tenacity to reach the sun. And I viewed that as an epitome of my life and all the things I had overcome to that point. So I wanted to celebrate that, not in my life, but in the lives of everyone else, all the roses out there. You may hear me say, I am the rose, and that's what I'm talking about. And a lot of you are the roses. Started Rose Creek Wealth Management and things, started to blossom. I didn't try to do that. I started being recognized for the work that I was doing. Nominated for Forbes 30 Under 30, featured top 100 in finance, Nashville Business Journal 40 Under 40, Nashville Top 30 Under 30, you name it. All of these different accolades and accomplishments. So how did I end up on the cold, hardwood floor, crying my eyes out? My trauma, which may be similar to a lot of yours or some of your students, forced me to work. That was my defense mechanism. That was my coping. I put it into work. I put it into distracting myself. I put it into perfectionism. I never took care of the wounds that I had, and it landed me there. And so when I woke up that next day after being on that floor, I decided I gotta do something. I went to see my doctor, my primary care doctor. I went to see a therapist for the first time in my life, right? I started doing a lot of different things, and I had already been doing something that was really important to me, yoga. Didn't realize it before, but yoga had become a significant part of my healing journey and connecting my mind to my body and presence in me so that I'm not experiencing mentally the traumas of my past when I'm standing here on stage. I loved yoga so much that I became a yoga instructor, y'all. I wanted to give those benefits to other people as well. And in my classes, y'all, I always start in a child's pose. A little risque picture, Start in a child's pose. And for some people, this is a very vulnerable pose. Right, are we safe to be vulnerable here? Okay. It's a vulnerable pose. Your face is down, you don't see, especially with someone with trauma in their background, right? PTSD, and you want to be able to see things. You're on high alert all the time. You want to be able to know what's going on. But this is a vulnerable pose. But when I'm in this pose, I make sure to build a foundation for class so that students know that they are safe. Right? With these three things, I got to create a safe environment. How do I do that? I tell them, you all may have your face down, but no, I'm watching the doors. The doors outside are locked. You are safe in here. This is a safe environment. Never make assumptions about what they were doing the day before, what they brought into class. I do a good job of reminding people in this moment that all of those things, let those wash down your back as you approach class. And I'm gonna take the same approach every single class, no matter what it is. We're gonna ground ourselves. We're gonna be present. And then after, if you gotta deal with some things, you deal with some things. But right now in this room, you are safe. And And then we make genuine connection. We start by connecting with each other through our breath. Can we do a quick breath real quick? If it feels safe for you, could you close your eyes? Plant both of your feet on the ground. And just feel your sit bones on your seat. Take a deep inhale through your nose. And exhale slowly out of your mouth. Let's do that 2 more times. Take a big inhale through your nose. Exhale slowly out of your mouth. Last inhale, fill up and hold it at the top. For 3, 2. Take 1 more sip in and exhale. You can open your eyes. Right, we build genuine connection because that energy is transferred between all of us. And these are the 3 tips to help build resilience with your students. Right, creating a safe environment means maintaining your commitment to physical safety, promoting emotional safety for their development. We'll see some of the research and studies behind that, but then also being very intentional about cultural safety. Because if a child, a person doesn't feel safe culturally because of just who they are and how they show up, it's going to impact that emotional safety as well. Right, and I used to breeze past this, so I want to give it the respect that it deserves, but physical safety is a growing concern, even at schools like yours. Right, I come from Nashville, Tennessee, where just earlier this year, we had a tragic incident at a school where 3 children, 3 adults were killed by a mass shooting in the same neighborhood, in the school that I went to. And that, it was so close to home that even the head of school at where I went to school and where Patrick went to school was asked to comment on this. And he talked about the vulnerabilities that we were all exposed to and how the unthinkable could actually happen to us all at any moment. Right? Physical safety, can't stress it enough. Having visual cues so people know that when they step on campus, things are being monitored. Reinforcing that physical safety. Emotional safety, of course. Right? Kids have to feel safe in their bodies, safe with you in order to learn. Talk about that in the next slide. But then also, cultural safety. Are all of your celebrations around one type of religion, one type of person, one type of people? Does field day include activities that someone who can't walk can participate in? Are you thinking about all the different people that you represent and that are represented in your organization at school? Polyvagal theory, you do not have to go, unless you want to stay up and read about some real nerdy stuff, you can go look up polyvagal theory, but I want to show this to prove a point, right? There are different multiple vagals, right? There are different states in polyvagal theory. In the top, hyperarousal. This is the sympathetic nervous system activated, right? Our nervous system is constantly scanning our environment for threats, right? This is how we survive throughout evolution. And it's constantly scanning. And when we get in a hyperarousal state, right? Boom! I saw you jump. Right? Fight or flight. If something really happened, somebody might run, other people might freeze and not know what to do, right? That's activated in those moments. And when a kid is experiencing emotional distress, when they're experiencing trauma, they experience either this state or the next state, which is hypoarousal, right? Hyper is when I'm gonna be vigilant. My trauma may get me stuck in that mode too, right? I may swing from hyper to hypo and not understand, why I'm feeling the way that I do, and I have no control over this, y'all. This just happens. Autonomic nervous system, this is automatic. A kid's going to respond wherever their minds, brains, and bodies tell them to do. And so you're gonna see, right? We know what hyperarousal looks like. We've seen those kids, we've seen all of that. We've probably seen hypoarousal as well, the kid who just isn't there, right? The kid that is very shut down, we may call it depressed, very withdrawn. And for both of these states, what do we say? We say, you need to calm down. You need to cheer up. Into that window of tolerance, the sense of safety, right? When a child feels safe, this is where they are. And the more they're around safe people and safe environments, they are in this more often, and this is where social engagement happens. You want to connect with your students, they have to be here. Because if they're not going to be ready to connect when they're scared, right? They're not going to be ready to connect when they are in this hyper-arousal, shut-down state. You know what else happens in the window of tolerance? Learning. If you want to get the best out of your students to help them reach their full potential, you have to have them in their window of tolerance. I'm going to tell this story. I was my 8th grade year at a school like yours. Got approached by a guy who called Jake the Jokester. Jake comes up to me, he says, "Hey Reggie, you want to hear a joke?" Sure. "What's the difference between a black person and a bag of shit?" The bag. Insinuating that me and all the people who look like me because of the color of our skin are merely waste. I know you're probably thinking, why did he use profanity up there? But think about that. I was in the 8th grade and I had to hear that. Where did that put me? Right? I was in a hyper-aroused state. I wanted to beat him down. Right? But I had to collect myself. I think I had tools within me innately already to try to get me back to a state of safety and security within my mind and within myself, so that I didn't appear to be the angry black kid. I thought this was interesting. Just the discrepancy between how safe students feel at school versus educators. Right? Educators think that 87% of educators think that schools are safe. Kids are not there. It means we got to do a better job. If our schools are safe, we have to do a better job of making them feel safe. Their feelings are so important because that affects what their nervous system does. That affects so much about how they show up. So how can you do this while also promoting well-being? Turn mistakes into learning opportunities. Right? And this may mean deviating from lesson plans. Right? If something big comes up in the world, that often, it does, and it involves people and interpersonal connection and interpersonal stuff that they're going to use for the rest of their lives, you cannot teach parallelograms that day. Parallelograms can be on the back burner to teach some real lessons that are going to stick with them for the rest of their lives. No offense to any other science or math teachers. Create judgment-free zones. Right, judgment-free zone can be an area of refuge. It could be a place like the Roberts Room. It could be a student lounge where absolutely zero tolerance for judgment, for criticism, for hatred toward others exists. Raise your hand if you have a policy around DEI type of things. If there is an actual policy written at your school. Raise them high, I can't see.
Judgment.
Okay. Policies hold people accountable. Right? Having policies that say when these things happen, these are the responses the school is going to make. Because in that one instance, I didn't feel safe to bring the egregious act of racism to a teacher because all the little things, the microaggressions that came up before that, no one checked those. That was just one big example that came up. I have so many more of those stories that went unaddressed, even when heard by people like you at schools like yours. People need judgment-free zones where they can allow their nervous system to relax and be in a window of tolerance. And then celebrate differences. Again, look at the makeup of your school. Look at the makeup of the school that you want to create. What type of celebrations should you include? What type of sports should you include? Right? What is the communication? What is the literature like? All of these different things make a difference. If I could read a book by somebody who looks like me, I might have been interested in reading way before I had to do that summer reading exam. Right? Schools should bring a student peace, not pain, where they're enriched, not endangered. Never make assumptions. I love this one. Right? Become aware and challenge your preconceived notions. The next slide is going to speak to that. Recognize that even your best students are going to struggle and have struggled. And oftentimes, if they're perfectionists, there's probably more struggle there than you realize. And then know that there is no such thing as a bad student. I know some of y'all are like, yeah, right. But they're not. These are new people to this world who are learning every single day. New people. We got some old people and we got some new people. And so a lot of things that they, especially in elementary and middle school, like they're experiencing these things for the first time. And so creating those moments of learning from the mistakes is extremely important to realize there's no such thing as a bad student. When I talk about challenging your preconceptions, I look at Harvard's implicit bias study, right? These are the things that are going on in all of our minds subconsciously, right? 64% of us prefer straight to gay. 68% of us white to black. 70% of us all associate male with science and female with liberal arts. Think about how these things show up with how you teach, with how you grade, with how you advocate for students. These are going to have an impact. And so just knowing that there's an implicit bias isn't the big point. It's having intentionality of combating those things. Right? I know I'm going to go into this. Even me as a black man, I might have a preference of white to black just because of the things that we get put into our systems and minds throughout our lives. Right? But having that intentionality of how do I combat this so that I make the experience equal for every single student is so, so important. I think about this when I was a junior in high school and I got a call in the morning from my dad after he had been out of prison for about 9 months. And he goes, "You know I'm back locked up, right?" Dropped the phone. Pissed off. Angry. Because what happened for me was activation of all of that trauma that I felt when I was 8 years old and I saw his face plastered on his TV screen. All these crimes, right? Possession of drugs, selling narcotics, evading arrest, attempted homicide. All those things came back up for me. And so I wasn't the 16, 17-year-old going to school that day. I was the 8-year-old kid who was hurt. And when I got to school, I had this big old jug of Gatorade. I carried it, I put it in on the table at breakfast, and I was like, "Hey guys, don't touch my Gatorade, I'm gonna go get my breakfast." Come back to the table, and my best friend, he's sitting there with a cup of Gatorade. This little devilish grin on his face. I'm like, so I throw a tater tot in his face. He throws it back. Throw a biscuit at him. He throws it back. I pick up my entire plate and I just throw it at him, jelly, ketchup, all of that right in his face. Then I get up and I walk over to him and I start choking him and we start to wrestle and we start to fight. And then the older guys pull us off of each other. In that moment, if you had just walked in, you would have made the assumption that two black kids fighting. Not knowing what was really at play that day. I was an 8-year-old, sad, lonely 8-year-old, longing for the love and care of some adult, his father. That's what happened that day. Or you might just thought he's really serious about Gatorade. And I am trying to get a sponsorship from Gatorade, so holla at me. Oh, man. So how can you do this? You can scan this QR code. I have the top 3 resources. I have the templated examples of those that you can download with that QR code. And if you don't have your phone or can't get to it today, just go to reggieD4.com, send me a message, or reggieD4/future ready, and you can get a copy of the cheat sheet that goes along with this presentation with those tools associated with it. But creating a regulation toolbox for teachers and students I think the first step in helping students build emotional well-being is helping your own, doing it yourself, looking at your patterns and your backgrounds, and modeling that to the children. School-wide mindfulness practice, daily. And when we just sat there, closed our eyes, and breathed a little bit, I bet some nerves came down. I think if you did that on a daily basis, if I had done that before walking into that class that day, and administered baseline well-being assessments. I've done so many physicals for my body before playing sports, but rarely ever do they look at what's going on in the brain. Until concussion protocol became a thing, it was not looked at. But how do you measure where a kid is if you don't know where they started? And then an extra one in there, so that's number 10 for y'all. Mental health days, I think, are critical, and they should be built into all of your schedules as a person, yourself, as for your students as well. Because you just don't know what's going to happen. If I could have just said, today I'm not going to school, I wouldn't have had that incident. Right? Assumptions, right? Don't judge them, because they once protected us from threats and danger. You see that bush rustling over there? I got to know if that's a bear, if that's a little kitten, I got to know. Right? It protected us from threats and danger, but now they prevent us from connecting and understanding. Become aware of your preconceptions. Lastly, make genuine connection. I like to say, learn their names, go to their concerts and games, and understand from where they came. When I say their names, I mean get to know them. Understand them. I had a coach, had me for 4 years of track, and he would always call me Guy. I like my name. Call me my name. Right? When I say concerts and games, I'm not just talking about concerts and games. I'm talking about the things that matter to them. Show interest in that. It may be the music, it may be a movie that everybody's talking about. You have no interest in watching it or listening to it, but think of what it would mean for your students if you came in with lyrics from Lil Uzi Vert. Can you tell me what this means? It goes a long way, y'all. And then understand from where they came. I had so many times at a school like yours where people made up a whole story about where I came from, who I was, without knowing for sure. All they were doing was slapping stereotype on top of stereotype. And it all wasn't true. Or most of it wasn't. When I think of making genuine connection, I think of understanding attachment styles. I'm not going to go deep into this, but attachment styles deal with how a young person feels connected to their original caregiver growing up and how that impacts relationships going forward. Right? A secure attachment style. These are children who were loved and nurtured and cared for, and they believe that their needs are going to be met, so they're going to be grounded, they're going to be happy. These are the window of tolerance kids, and their window of tolerance is big. Then you have these insecure attachment styles, ambivalent. Ambivalent is it's unpredictable with how their needs are going to be met. They feel that their needs are going to be met, but it's unpredictable. And so they're wary of strangers, right? Insecure and anxious. Then you have avoidant. In the back of their minds, they're like, nope, nobody's going to fulfill my needs. Because when I was little and I would cry and I would need a bottle or I would need to just be held, they didn't hold me. And so I'm going to be avoidant. And then you have disorganized. No rhyme or reason. It's all chaotic. There is no predictability whatsoever. And there's a likelihood that I don't think that my needs are going to be met at all. And I don't know how that's going to happen, how I'm going to meet those. And so it shows up in a bunch of different ways. You may see the depression, you may see the outburst, you may see passivity, you may see withdrawal, you may see a whole bunch of different things. But understanding, right? You're going to want to love on a child and be there for a child, but they may stiff arm you as the avoidant attachment style. They may really want you, but are wary because they don't understand if you're really going to be there when they need it. And so have patience, because the thing that combats these insecure attachment styles is you loving on a child consistently. I got some examples from my time at a school like yours. On the right, this woman is just, she's like my other grandmother. My French teacher, BD O'Connor. BD, we had an assignment in class where we talked about our family story. And in that, she was taking notes, right? This is all in French, but I'm telling her. And one of the things that I told her was that I was somehow distantly related to Alex Haley, the author of Roots. And so she just like kept that in the back of her head. Small acts make big impacts. Later on, right before Christmas, she gave me a big old copy of Roots. Gave it to me, wrote some sweet things inside of it, and I had it. It was a gift from her to me because she listened. She tried to genuinely connect. Small gesture, big thing. Later found out I'm not related to Alex Haley. Oh, but it's still nice. And I did read the book after about 12 years, so. And you can see she has a copy of my first manuscript, of the earliest draft of my book, and that's how we still are connected to this day. On the left, the face that's kind of cut off the screen is my best friend who stole my Gatorade, and he's not featured in this because he took my Gatorade. But this is another teacher of mine, Annie B. Williams, who used to always tell her class how much she just loves Reggie. I love him because he's always so diligent, he's doing his work, he sits in the stairwell and he just does his work, he doesn't bother anybody. She didn't realize that I did not want to be bothered by anybody. I didn't care to be around many people that was there. I was just trying to get my work done, get on with my day. But that outward pour of emotion and expression of love for me did wonders for me. I talked about my mom, but I didn't talk about the emotional distance. I felt very emotionally disconnected from my mom because the way that she came up and the trauma that she faced made her show love in a way that we wouldn't probably call love. And so to see a woman tell the world how much she loved me meant the world to me. In fact, quick story, I was emotionally dysregulated to the max one day. And I remember texting my wife, my brothers, and that lady on the left, saying, I'm sorry, but I gotta do what I gotta do. And I don't know what the consequences on the back end of this are gonna be, but I gotta do what I gotta do. I had homicidal thoughts at that moment, and I was ready to act on it. And I blacked out for the rest of the night. And when I came to, somehow I was in this woman's arms. That's the impact that you can have on a young person by showing up and being there consistently. How can you do this? Learn something unique about each student. Befriend the family, right? And create communities and even affinity groups, because it's not just the student that is going to your school, it's their entire family. And for some, depending on their culture, it may be a big old extended family, right? You have to have communities where they feel included just as well. And then be authentically you. If you're not a yo, what's up type of person, don't come to yo, what's up me. Be you. And I like this. I was just in a trauma care training, and it was ask people who look at you and see your beauty and your brokenness and ask, what is my style of relating? I thought that was so beautiful. Somebody you trust. What is my style of relating to my students? Do I come off as authentic? Do I come off as real? Do I come off this way because this is how I'm trying to come off? Maybe there's a disconnect between where I am, who I know myself to be, and where other people perceive me. And sometimes that looks disingenuous. And maybe you just have to bridge that gap, right? So ask people who you trust and be honest with the people. Right? I love this. Students who are loved at home come to school to learn. Students who aren't come to school to be loved. Right? That's what you heard today. right? Those 9 tools and tips. And y'all got a copy of this in the app. You also, if you downloaded the cheat sheet, you'll have that all laid out in the cheat sheet along with those resources as well, right? Remember though, create a safe environment. Never make assumptions and make genuine connection. Harvard study, the single most common factor in helping a child develop resilience is at least one caring adult in their life. Let that be you. You be the one. Tupac, I love Tupac. He said, I'm not saying I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee you that I will spark the brain that will. That's why y'all have the greatest profession in the entire world, right? Y'all are gonna be on somebody's pictures on their presentation one day because of the impact that you made in their lives. That's a beautiful thing. I'll tell this quick story about a starfish. There's this one time, there was this little girl, and she was out on the beach chucking starfish into the water. This old man comes up to her. He's like, what are you doing? She goes, well, there was a big storm, and I have to save these starfish. I have to get them back into the water so that they're okay. And he looks at the beach, and he's like, there are thousands of starfish out here. You can't possibly save them all. She nods, bends down, picks up another starfish, and chucks it into the water. He said, I made a difference with that one. I saved that one. You're going to come across a lot of students in your careers, and you're not going to be able to save them all. But you can make a difference, a huge difference. And I want just to challenge you all. Write a letter of why you keep doing what you do, why you show up every single day. And at the end of that letter, I want you to write one name for the year. A student who you're going to make a difference for. And then the next year, come back, read that letter of your why. Why do you keep going? And then write another student's name. And then when it's all said and done, I want you to come back to that letter and look at all the impacts that you made on all those different students. You have a fantastic profession. How are y'all feeling? Y'all good?
Yeah.
All right. Raise your hand if you've been inspired. Yep. And if none of this snaps to you at all, you're like, why are we talking about emotional stuff and all of that? Remember this, that you will retire in a world that is run by your students. And if they're bullies and they're mean and they don't know how to deal with emotions today, they're going to inflict pain. Thank you to SCIS. Follow me, and then if you didn't get a copy of that, you can download it there. Thank you so much.